morning, Soraya.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Now that I got my cap on that we bought when we were in Scotland, we went to the Highlands and our buddy Gordon took us up to the Highlands. And do you remember that little cafe we pulled over at?
I do.
Yeah, and we were there in Scotland to see Dream Syndicate and Rain Parade.
Yeah. And from that trip and someone who was on stage, we've got like a connection, right? A little connection to today's topic.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because Vicky Peterson had was a part of that lineup of Dream Syndicate. And today we're talking with someone who's got a really interesting book coming out. So Jeff, do you want to mention who that is?
Yes, so we're talking about the book that's coming up, Eternal Flame, the authorized biography of the Bangles, and it's Jennifer Otter Bickerdike. Did I get
Yeah,
that right?
I think
So
so. We're
yeah,
we're gonna confirm it.
yeah. So Jennifer is an expat that's from California, now living in the UK. So it'll be afternoon for her, morning for us. And I'm excited for this book. It's coming out. I think when this posts, it'll be like a week away, something like that. So third week of February is, I think, the release date. We've been fortunate enough to get an early copy, so we've got to peek in it and see how awesome it is. And Bengals fans are definitely going to want this.
Absolutely. And joining us today also is our friend Ronnie Barnett,
Yes.
who is a true how do you say Banglophile?
Beng-
Banglophile.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
but we couldn't ask for more to have Ronnie with us to speak with Jennifer about writing this book. And um, it's a really extensive telling of the story. And I just want to share one little quote, Jeff, just to kind of sum it up. And this is from the preface to the book. And in Jennifer's words, the real story of the Bangles is one of every band, and this band specifically. It is the often bald reality of changing objectives, miscommunications, naivete, disappointments, and the unpredictable consequences of fame. But more importantly, it is a study in hard work, aspiration, friendship, focus, and hope.
Wow. Nice summary right there.
Yeah, and I think as for Bengals fans, this book is a good read, if for nothing else, this last bit of that quote. I mean, this is tenacity times 1,000 in and Vicky and Debbie and Susanna and the people around them all kind of speak to this. Like you really see this early on, and it just builds. And we start to see this story of this band of people that come together and, you know, climbing, climbing, climbing. And then we also get to see, what contributes or, how things kind of fall together for the band to decide to step away and do other things. And I think it's tough to tell that story sometimes, but I think the author's done, I think she's done a really good job at giving us, all the things that could have contributed to it and letting the band tell that story for themselves. So, uh, I don't know, good book. I'm really excited to get this talk started. So, how about we jump into it, Jeff?
Yes, let's do it. Bangle on.
Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff,
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
a podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, agruviar.
Let's get groovy. All right, Soraya, you want to get us started on today?
Yeah, so for our listeners today, we are in for really a great treat. So I can speak about this person's resume for a long time, but allow me to just hit a couple of key points. Joining us today is Dr. Jennifer Otter Bickerdike. I hope I said that correctly.
I was gonna say, girlfriend, you did it better than like 24%, like 2 million% of the professional news presenters in the world. So
I'll take
yes,
it.
sister, yes.
Thank you. Uh, Jeff, she is really a rock and roll cultural historian. So allow me to share with you. Um,
Oh,
she, as you can see in the in her background, new book is coming out about the Bangles, Eternal Flame. But Jeff, she brings to the table a really varied experience. She's an academic, a writer, a presenter, a historian, a podcaster, and part of a nonprofit organization that helps promote um, women in the music industry in the UK, but came from, worked in the music business. She was West Coast marketing director for Interscope Geffen A&M at 25, then goes into consulting, then goes into academia and has written numbers of books, including just a couple to wet your whistle here, folks. Brittany, Pieces of a Modern Icon, You Are Beautiful and You Are Alone, the biography of Nico, Why Vinyl Matters, and not only the Bangles book, but a future upcoming book. She's working with Jane Weedlin on her memoirs. Welcome to the show, Jennifer Otter Bickerdike. Thank you so much.
When am I hiring you to be my hype woman? I mean, I need my own publicist. So, girlfriend, like, please, KIT, keep in touch because that was fantastic. I'm a little bit high on myself right now. That felt fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. We have lots of questions, but why
Ask
don't
me
we
everything.
delve
No, you
into
ask me. Ask away. Jump in. Ask me anything.
We will. So Jeff, why don't you start us off and then we'll keep going from there.
Yeah, so I wanted to start from the beginning, at least from the beginning of the Eternal Flame book. At the beginning of the book, you mentioned, I think it was 2019, maybe 2018, you first got the idea to really um, invest time and start working on this book. So how did you get started and get involved with the band to do this? Because we mentioned in our intro before you were on the college end that it's a unique book in that you're telling it from the band's side of the story. It's not a bunch of facts that you're throwing out. It's more personal. So how did you get involved with the band to actually do the book? Can you tell our listeners how that actually came
Of,
about?
of course, and I really appreciate the fact that you have pointed out that difference because it is such a huge chasm between facts and innuendos and the different mythology, and not just with the Bangles, but with any band. And to get things straight from them, how it really happened, is hugely different. And Jeff, one thing that I found really alarming is going back and visiting the same videos, interviews, press that I had read as a child that had, and sorry, you're probably the same age-ish as me, if not younger, but those as a kid, just seeing a woman being on the cover of Rolling Stone or being interviewed, I thought that was so inspiring. But as a grown-up, going back and reading it, the way they were treated was appalling. I mean, really gut-wrenching. And there were times I was talking to Susanna about this the other night. There were so many times when I would be like in an archive, and really specifically remember being in the British Library in the archive where you can't talk, you can't have your phone. And I was having to like run out of the archive into the lobby. And mind you, it's an 8 hour difference between where Sue is and where I am. And calling Sue at like 6:37 in the morning because I couldn't wait and just being like, can I swear on this podcast or not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm being just like, she's like, hello, what the fuck, Sue? I'm so angry. And she's just like, what, are you okay? Like, what's happening? And I'd be like, in 1980s, like, in the library, I'm screaming. And this poor woman is like trying to wake up. And she's like, that was 40 years ago. It's okay. Settle down. Like, but I was like enraged. So I think that it is such a huge thing that this is from their point of view. That's a really important point. And one critique I've already gotten, and of course, it's an authorized biography. So they got to read what I wrote. And, along the way, there were definitely moments where it was someone would read something that someone else had said and be like, oh, I don't like that. We have to go back and change that. So sometimes things change, the story change, and it's fascinating because they all have their own viewpoint of certain things. But I think that that's part of it. That's part of them trying to control their legacy when they've had no control over it. But to go to back to your first point, what I did is I made a list of artists that I really loved and had really, really shaped the world and my mindset and given me the ability to see what was possible as a woman. And growing up in the 80s, I wasn't like I was going around like vagina first, being like, I'm a woman. What can I do or not do? It really wasn't like that. Because I get asked this all the time. Sorry, but you do too, as a woman with a successful podcast. I get asked all the time, like, what's it like to be a woman in the music business? And I'm like, I, a man would never get asked that question in a million years, you know? But I just made a list of like who had inspired me. And it wasn't just women, it was all different people. But the Bangles were high up on that list. And I literally did what so many people have done that are fans. I found the Bangles website and I emailed the Bangles website and I said, hi, I just did this critically acclaimed book on Nico. I'd love to do your biography. And, if I could talk to you, that'd be fantastic. And I got zero reply, unsurprisingly, zero. It was like writing into a black hole, right? And then, but I'm like, I'm not going to give up. And then I put out on all my social media, I'm like, if anyone knows anyone whose dog, cousin, stepsister, pet iguana may know somebody that knows the Bengals, please holler at me. Is this too much detail, by the way, or is this good?
No,
Oh,
no, we need it.
Okay.
perfect.
Okay.
We need it all.
Okay, so you guys will like this. As fans, you'll love this. So I get back, I'm just like, I was hoping like someone would literally like hit me up and be like, oh, like I know their tour manager, I know this person, that person. Out of nowhere, this girl that I've maybe met twice in my life and like years ago, like those friends on Facebook or Instagram that you're like, I I know I added you or we're friends. I have no idea where or how. Like who are you again? It was like one of those vibes, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she emails me and says, I'm working a festival and I'm picking up Vicky Peterson from the airport and driving her to the festival. And she's like, if you write a letter, I'll give it to her. Now, I don't know about you two, but if some random person posted on social media and said, can you help me? I would never ever offer to like give a letter to a celebrity that I didn't know. Like I just wouldn't. I just wouldn't do it. It's just weird. But she kindly offered. I wrote the letter. She gave it to Vicky and she said that Vicky was like, "Oh, cool." And then nothing happened. And then a couple years later, it was Saturday morning and I wake up and like, you're not supposed to check your phone first thing in the morning, but of course I do. And there's an email from Vicky Peterson being like, are you still interested in doing it? And I mean, I like died. I think I was downstairs in my kitchen. I started screaming, and my husband's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, the Bengals got back to me!" And then as soon as I could, I called her, and I was so excited. I was talking to her, and then she's like, "Susanna wants to talk to you tomorrow," and I was like, "What?" Oh my God. I mean, it was like God wants to, it was like Jesus was talking to me with Vicky, but now God and like Mary and whatever the Holy Ghost, now she wants to talk to me. And so the next day I call Sue, and I mean, you guys, I was like I don't get nervous around celebrities, but I was like shaking. I was like, hello. And then I even said, I'm like, I'm so nervous. It was really, really fucking pathetic. But that's how the whole thing started. And then it was just like, it was probably like at least a year of talking to them, getting to know them, getting them to trust me, and not giving up and just being like, I want to tell this story so badly. So that's the really long version of how it happened.
Just as a side note, I wanted to add in, Jen, that sorry, was it last year that we went to Scotland or the year before?
Yeah, last year.
So we were in the Pint. What was that club, Soraya,
The
in
Hug and Pint.
Elgin Pint?
Let's go.
So we were there after the show, and Vicky was part of the show, joining in with the Dream Syndicate.
Hmm.
Vicky pulled me aside. We had talked to Vicky before on the podcast, and she's like, "Jeff, I want to tell you about something." So she pulled me aside, and among other things, she's like, "We've got this book coming out, and this author
Oh,
is gonna nail it and provide our side of the story. It's gonna be
oh,
authorized. You guys are gonna love it." She was so excited about what you've done. So.
oh. I
About a
mean,
year in advance. So I
Yeah.
her excitement was visible,
oh,
very palpable. So
that's so nice to hear. I mean, I can say this hand on heart. Like I individually love like I didn't get to talk to Mickey, so I can't say that about her, but the three main Bengals, I love all three of them. Like I consider all three of them really, really close friends. I go to Susanna all the time for personal problems. Her and Vicky are like, they're like my big sisters. Like I love them
Mm.
so much. They're so wise, they're so kind, they're so generous. It almost freaks me out, to be honest, because like I'll have these moments. I'm also working with Mike Joyce from the Smiths, and the Smiths are my favorite band ever. And it'll be weird because I'll be with Mike, like I've spent the night at his house a couple times, and I'll be having breakfast. I'm sitting there, you guys, in my pajamas, no makeup, looking like a bag lady, having toast with him and his wife, and I'll just be like, "Holy fuck! I'm eating toast with a Smith in my pajamas, not wearing a bra. What the fuck, you know?" And it's kind of like that with Sue and Vicky. Like 90% of the time, I'm totally fine. And then every so often, I'll be like, oh my God, like this is just insane. But I think that's what's good about it is because I have so much respect and appreciation for them. You know what I mean?
They're amazing.
I want to ask a question since you mentioned it. One of the things that, Jeff and I, we literally, I think you were kind enough to share with us a copy of the book. And I think the minute we got the PDF and we opened it, and then we literally texted, I think it was literally within minutes. Um, there was this note in the foreword and at the bottom of the page, and yes, you know, I'm an academic too, so I read notes, footnotes, I read everything. And there was this note, and it said Michael Steele declined to be involved in this project.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I noticed as I read, her voice is present. And that's hard to do when you don't have that direct contact. And so I wanted to ask you, how did you approach this? And was that difficult to give her a present voice, even though she declined to, and understand? I think all fans know, Michael Steele is doing something different with her life and we respect her space. But was that difficult for you?
Well, first of all, that's really kind, and from two such connoisseurs as the two of you, especially nerd to nerd, you and I, girlfriend, that is like you cannot have a bigger compliment. So that's very, very kind, and I really take that on board as massive. It was very difficult, especially because I got to know the other three so intimately and so well to the point where, like I would tell them about personal issue. So it went way beyond like the subject. I mean, now it's way beyond that, but like as we were doing the book, it got way beyond subject, author, that kind of thing. And here's this person that is really an inherent part of the story and someone that clearly is a complicated, interesting, smart, vibrant human being. And it's so easy to have that person be in broad brushstrokes, especially, sorry, Jeff, but when it's usually men that are either interviewing the Bengals or talking about the Bengals. There's all these men. Oh, she was so hot. I had a huge crush on her. Da da da. Oh, she was really mentally ill. Da 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 da. So it's very, very like they're not unpicking what may have actually been happening there. So how do I take the facts, the opinions I have and try to make a somewhat fully formed person from that? That was very difficult. And I would say I just did the absolute best I can. I got the most information. And the other thing I could say, one thing about the Bengals is that it'd be so easy for the three girls to, and they like to be called the girls. I'm not saying that to put them
Mhm.
down. They like to be called the girls. The three girls to have said anything negative or to have said negative things about Mickey, about her not participating or just damage, like rude things about her or things that were frustrating. Not one bad word was ever said about Michael Steele by any of the three ladies. Like, only ever wonderful, kind, sweet things. Even when I would try to play devil's advocate with them about things and try to get a reaction from them to try to fill out that persona as we're talking about, to try to get more of a feel for her. They never ever bit at that. It was always very, very flattering with Michael.
Absolutely. It was so interesting to me because Michael Steele is this very mysterious figure, and yet you gave her a lot of agency and a lot of voice in this
Oh, I
in
love
your
you.
book. And so, and when her voice comes in, she's helping to add to the story of this band. And to I wanted to add one of the quotes that really was encouraging to me was towards the end, as you're talking about the band moving into a different phase and kind of moving away. Um, it's a quote from Vicky, and she says, I never and still do not hated my I never hated my Bangle mates, my bandmates. And I
Mhm.
think that's an important story because I think some of what you add is this dimension of these
Mhm.
people that have come together and have this friendship and have this story together. Um, and even though people were trying to pit them against one another, they never did. And they stayed
Mhm.
as a collective. And yeah, I mean, things happen in bands, but and I think you were honest in approaching that part of their story, in that there's still the girls, there's still this collective, which I think was really refreshing.
That's really kind of you to say. I mean, something you guys obviously are veterans and seasoned in understanding the dynamics of how a group works. But if we think about it, I mean, not to digress, I just found out that a friend of mine that I dated in high school, so we're going back 30 years, that he's got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And the reason I even bring this up in this context is because I was trying to remember, I'm like, why did we stop dating? Like, what happened? Like, huh? Like, I can't remember back 30 years ago, like what happened. You know what I mean? And it seems desperately important that I go and see him and talk to him and just, have that kind of closure. But if you think about that in terms of the Bangles, this is 40 years ago, so longer than that ago that they're telling me about this. It was not that long of a period of time that they were together as a threesome. When I say the threesome, I mean the sisters and Sue, or a foursome with. If we talk about the period the book covers, the foursome with Mickey, and yet they are constantly asked about it now. They're constant, even like they're known for this very short amount of time, and you're not really equipped at that time in your life. You're not fully formed in terms of to deal with the emotions, the fame, and like you said, every single thing was trying to pull them apart. It wasn't about how do we create this unity, how do we create this great inspiring band. And I think that it was about how do we milk the most money out of them, and there was nobody there telling them otherwise. And you see, and that's one of the things the thing that's so fascinating when you spend time with them individually. It's kind of like if you're with Debbie is still so frustrated and sad to this day that like it couldn't have been like the Beatles. It could have been the four of them taking on the world. And you'll be with Debbie and you're like, "Oh my God, 100%. I so hear you. Oh my God, yes, 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 yes." But then you'll go to Vicky and so you're just like all fired up about Debbie's point of view. But then you'll get to Vicky and then Vicky's like more in between. Like, okay, well this happened, that happened, maybe this is that. And then you go over to Sue, and it's like, I don't think Sue ever was like, I want to be the lead singer. It's just she was kind of pushed into that by the press and this and that. And so you kind of, within like a 3 hour conversation, an hour with each of them, I've gone like all around the clock. Does that make sense? So I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Totally.
do you
Total.
guys find that? Do you guys find that like when you're reading the book, like what did you guys think?
It's exactly that. I was mentioning to Jeff that one of the things that I liked about the way you treated the band here and told their story, we get a lot of dimension about their
Oh, good.
relationships. And so we start to see, right, these four people, they were this democracy, this democratic
Mhm.
collective. And then you see them rise up and you start to hear their voices. And like there was a moment where Vicky says, before in my bands, I was up front. And then suddenly I found my natural spot because I was a lead guitarist, but it was this unusual kind of where do I stand? And then one of the other anecdotes that I like, and please stop me if you don't want me to say it, but
No, say whatever you want. I don't
when
care.
the band's on American Bandstand.
Hmm.
And the backstory in that chapter is Debbie kind of speaking about, I've been kind of pushed back, pushed back, pushed back.
Hmm.
And suddenly here was Dick Clark recognizing me and even saying, Debbie, they've forgotten about you. And then she mentions, he asked me a question and that validated where I was on the stage. Because
Mm-hmm.
she said,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly where I had been used to having a piece or a spotlight, I started getting pushback, less light, less focus. And here was someone reminding me what I contributed. And that was another thing is Debbie Peterson for us is someone we respect, admire, and love her. I mean, Vicky as well. We've had Annette on, and Sue. We have a lot of respect for Susanna Haas. We haven't spoken to her yet, but Debbie's a little mysterious, and you gave us
Really?
to
Oh,
us.
she'd love to hear that. If you guys told her that she's mysterious, Debbie would love
We,
that.
we I mean, we treat her very respectfully, but I think we've never used those words. But one of the things that you do that help kind of break this mystery about her, you give us access to her journals.
Aren't those incredible?
I mean, and when I read the first entry, I said, reminds me of myself at that age and the things that reacted. And I said, but holy shit, this girl was reacting to meeting people that she admired, that she played with, that and tells this story from such a place of not just innocence, but of just genuineness.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, how was that? I mean, was there a lot of convincing to get access to those journals?
No, I mean, the hardest thing with Debbie, and I mean, she probably pissed off that I say that. Debbie is difficult only because Debbie has felt so pushed to the back and so invisible that it's almost like she creates this self-perpetuating situation where she's so worried about being invisible that she makes herself invisible. That's the
Hmm.
easiest way I can put it. Like for example, we were and even like in all the interviews we're doing now, I'm trying like my best to make sure everybody, if anyone, I don't want to be pushy to them and
Hmm.
because it's my book, so I don't expect them to be like doing all these interviews, and they very kindly have been like, okay, we'll support you, which is great, you know. But so I'm trying to be respectful of that. So for example, there was this one journalist wanted to interview all of us, and Debbie didn't come back to me, and so I just went back to her and I said, listen, you don't have to do it. It's not a problem. You don't have to do it. And she was just like, no, I want to do it. Don't think because I'm not making to make it sound the right way, but she's like, I know how the Bangles machine works. If you just want Sue, then I understand, but I do want to do it. So it's like she's so used to people not hearing her that she almost makes a stick for her own back. Am I making sense on that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
And you can see how that is. The most painful thing to me is hearing her think that a lot of it didn't make it into the book, but I mean, Debbie, like when she was in the band, stunning, like gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. And she thinks she's fat. She thinks she's ugly. And she thinks nobody thinks she's cute compared to Susanna. And it's so heartbreaking to hear that. I mean, I'm really tall as well. So Debbie and I have talked a lot about that, like her just feeling like this huge creature feature compared to, I mean, Sue is, when I'm with Sue, I literally have to like bend over. Like I always say to her, it's like the Sasquatch and the elf, you know what I mean? Uh,
that's hilarious.
sorry, are your listeners are just gonna think I'm the biggest freak ever.
I love you already, Jen.
Really? Okay. But so I really understand Debbie, and she's the youngest. She's the youngest. She's the younger sister. There's so many dynamics, and it breaks my heart. I love Debbie so much. She's such a gentle, sweet person. I think she's probably the most natural musician on everything. But it's almost like those fragilities that make her so amazing are the things that also trip her up. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
I try to show that in the book, but a lot of things got edited out. You know what I mean? Because I think she was like, "Do you really think people are going to want to read my journal?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there was more of the journal in the original edits of the book." I've told her I think she should just put her whole journal out as like what it was like to be a teenager in a band in the 80s. I've told her that before, but I just think sorry, I'm probably talking too much about this
No, no,
point, and I'm
no.
sorry to edit this, but I just think it speaks so much to what it was like to be a girl at that time trying to do something different. Like there's this great part of when she's like, I know I'm a girl, but I still want to be in a band. I still want to be a musician. I'm just like, how heartbreaking that you have to even think that or say that or any of that, you know? Heartbreaking.
One of the points that you make throughout the book is how the industry viewed this band versus how the band
Oh.
sells, and they constantly reiterate this point. We're women that play in a band. We're
Mhm.
a band that happen to be women, or we're badass rockers that happen to be women. And some of the quotes, for example, from Henry Rollins, kind of speak to
Oh.
that. There are these badass women with these great songs. And one of the things that I think really isn't lost at all in this narrative is uh, once uh, once the band, and I'm thinking of the band that was Vicky, Debbie, and their friend Amanda.
Hmm.
Um, Once that band kind of gets their bearings, they're a solid band. And
Hmm.
people, the men, especially the first managers and people, bookers, they go, they're really good. And
Hmm.
everyone keeps saying the same thing. They're really good. They're really solid. They get it together. And then when they join forces and it's the first foursome, Annette, Susanna, Vicky, and Debbie, people are still reacting to that, but it's the audiences that are going, you're a novelty. And
Hmm.
then they're constantly proving, no, we deserve this space here. And then, we get this narrative of this grouping of bands here in LA. And then when once bigger labels and different voices and everyone trying to say, do it like this, um, and then the whole David Kahn piece of
No.
their story, of no, do it again, do it again, do it again, but again, trying to break all four apart. And they were all four having to react to that and talk to somebody and redirect. And we see, and then the attention, the songs, the hits, but then it's that in that moment of hazy shade, walk like an Egyptian, and then eternal flame, that we start to see this transition. And I remember reading and just going, I know what's coming, and I'm not ready for it
Oh,
because
bless you.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy and proud of them. And they're constantly fighting back, constantly, and Jennifer, one of the things that now that you say it, I hear it. As a kid, I remember seeing these shows like MV3 and hearing the interview, and I love it. And now when I look at it, I get mad for Richard Blake to go, who's the singer? Susanna says, we're all the singers.
Hmm.
Well, everybody, they're all the singers. Or Arsenio Hall interviewing them and saying, what do you fight about? And Mickey Steele
Oh,
says, fight about the music. And
yeah.
he says, oh, you don't fight over, you have my crimping iron. I'm like,
Hmm. It
it
was
makes me pull my hair
it,
out.
it's absolutely insane. I mean, I want to go back to Debbie for one more second. Just one thing I want to say. I think of everybody of the three, and all of them are wonderful, and I love all of them. I think Debbie was the most unguarded in what she said on the record. And I really commend her for that. I really, really commend her for that because she just I don't think she can that in she's sorry to change the subject slightly, but um I think that she even says like at one point because people are like, oh, she's so negative. I think that her way of trying to work things out at that time period especially was to talk, and she didn't have anyone. They were always on the road. She had no one to talk to, no one telling her like this is okay or that's okay or how do you feel or how are you doing. And I think that she showed up in for this book the most unedited and the most this is actually how I felt and the least worried about. I mean, very yeah, she wants to look great, good, but the most raw of and the most how it actually felt. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Like that is Debbie in that book. Like that is
100%.
100%. But back to the other things you're saying, the Henry Rollins interviews I think are just the most brilliant. Like I think that those are some of the best parts in the book are Rollins interviews, and I'm so grateful he gave those to me. Um, and there's the part where just from the very beginning, where like that narrative that they can't play their instruments is so upsetting. The way that just begins and it just follows all the way through. And there was a point when we were writing the book, there's a another book that a producer wrote, and he wrote it about Hazy Shade. And he talks about how the Bengals came in to do Hazy Shade and how they'd never played it before. They didn't know how to play it, all this stuff, which is factually, as all three of us know here, completely. And poor Susanna was so upset, like, because doing the research, I was finding all this stuff. And I'm like, look at this. And I'm like, what a bastard. And poor Sue was like really upset, like really, really upset by this. And she's like, we have to set the record straight. But it's just little things that are like, oh, that's bullshit. That really hurts them. You know what I mean? And it hurts their legacy too. It hurts all of us as women, I think, honestly, to as terms like what we they would never say that about a man. And like Sue and I have done a couple interviews together, and it's fascinating. Like this is like recently, she gets asked, what are your female influences? I mean, I don't know about you, Soraya, but like, yeah, I love the Bangles. I love the Go-Go's. I worship Cyndi Lauper. But I also loved Boy George. I mean, actually, Boy George is in the same kind of camp. No pun intended, using the word camp. But
Right.
I, and really, Morrissey is still in the same family, you know, if we have the family tree. But what I'm saying is, like, no one is going to say to Jeff, what are your favorite male groups? Like,
Right.
no one will ever say that in a million years. Or, like, what were your male role models? Like, that's just not. And so Sue and I are like, you know, we're doing a BBC radio show, and she's being asked, what are your favorite female bands? And what was it like being in a girl group? And it goes back to that vagina question. Like, what's it like having a vagina? Like, you know what? I've never had anything else, so I'm not sure what am I comparing it to? Oh, by the way, trivia for today. I learned you cannot say the word orgasm on the BBC.
Oh.
Eh.
Yeah, just so you guys know. I have to do some Super Bowl coverage. And apparently there's some like When Harry Met Sally remake commercial, and I'm like, "Can you say orgasm?" And they're like, "No, you cannot say orgasm." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "How what do I say? Good time?" She's having a good time at the restaurant.
You can't just go with O.
Oh,
The
Big
good old O.
O.
The big O.
big
It was
O.
it was hilarious because they like you basically they talk to you about what they want you to say beforehand, right? And it's
Mm.
tomorrow. And I'm like, "Can I say orgasm?" And she's like, "Hold on a second, I have to check." Then you can hear this muffle. Nope, can't say orgasm. There's two different questions. There's another word I'd asked. I can't remember what the other one was, but you could say one, you couldn't say the other. Orgasm is a hard no, though. You can't
That's
say good time. You can't say you're having a good time. I'm like, okay, well, that's good to know.
that's hilarious.
Um, before we know that we're thankful for your time and we know
Oh,
that
of
you need to
course.
go. But I've got one last question, and that is about the structure of the book.
Just
The,
one? Just one last question. That's it.
I mean, I have thousands, but I've got 2 minutes. The structure of the book, was there anything that you felt did not get said now
Yes,
that the book is
tons didn't
finished?
get said. Tons didn't get said. Like in the structure, the way the book was, in terms of like the linear format of like, you know, it went like chronologically. Yes,
Mhm.
the book was. I can tell you guys this: about 100,000 words got left on the cutting room floor, so there was a lot more that didn't get
What
in
is
there.
that?
But that also said, I think a big issue is that a big issue is that the band never talk to each other. And you see that they talk about that in the book. They never talk to each other. They never, even now, they don't have, they're not as open with each other as I think they should be because there's so much, we all know this. After like, it's like family. Like that's just how, like you wish you could say to your mom, blah, 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 but like for
Yeah.
whatever reason, you just can't. Like, or your sister or whatever. Like, yeah. And one thing that's still a big deal in the Bangles is that everybody has fair shakes, you know? So as an author, that was frustrating to me because there are certain things that like I personally find more interesting. Like, oh my God, I love that story. And or it really was to me, it was not about like, okay, Debbie has this amount of words, Vicky has this amount of words, Sue has
Mm.
this amount of words, but that is how it is in the Bangles. It still is like that, right? So everybody has to have their equal amount of words. That's one or equal-ish, you know what I mean? Everything has to be equal. That's still a big thing. But also, I was just gonna say communication is not their strongest suit as a band. And I think too that I was working with Jane Weedland on her biography at the same time. And Jane is the opposite of the Bangles. Jane is like very, very raw, very, very 100% like, yep, I was doing this, that. Her biography, you guys, is insane. in all the right ways. Like it is the juicy, it's not like the Bangles book is about what it's like to be in a band in the 80s, these women trying to make it in a man's world. That's what that's about. Jane's is about her life story. So they're two separate things. Like the Bangles one is not about sex and drugs and rock and roll. That's not the story. Jane's is. So I think in that way I was disappointed, but I do have to tell you guys a really, really funny story. And that is when I first started writing the book, um, I had just moved to this small fishing village in the south of England, okay? And I was sitting on the beach with my dog and I was talking to Sue. And I was like, Sue, I'm like, listen, I know there had to be some hot, hot 80s icons that you hit that ass and you just have not, it's just not publicly known. I'm all girl, because if I were you, like looking like you did, being who you were, see Thomas Howell, Ralph Macchio, oh, hello, I would have been all up in that shit. And she's like, nope, not at all. I'm like, oh, I was like screaming. I mean, I'm just sitting on the beach in this fishing village, you guys, screaming down the phone to Susanna Hoffs. I mean, it was the most surreal thing ever. Screaming down the phone at her, going, no triple gangbang with Rob Lowe and Andrew McCartney. Come on, girl. I need to live for something. Um,
That's hilarious. That's so funny.
But then you drop this Rankin Rogers story.
oh, Susanna loves that story. But do you
That
know,
story is hysterical. And
did you not like the Terrence Trent D'Arby stuff?
yes.
I thought he was. I'm a big TTD fan, or we can't call him that anymore, but just for the sake of
Yes.
convenience, love, 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 love. And I don't know if you guys remember, but I just like there's like a footnote like this is exactly how his email looked because it's like
Yeah.
capital.
And, and yeah, it's just capital letters and
Yeah,
just oh,
yeah.
but there are these stories that you just drop in like, wait,
Oh,
what?
bless you.
And then and then of course there is this conversation between Apollonia Cotero and Prince
Oh,
about
she is one
Susanna,
of my.
and I when I was reading that part, I screamed. I screamed. I said, that's BS. That video did not show that. So, and
Did
I'll
it?
I'll let all the Bengals fans find that on their own in the book. I will not I won't elaborate on that story, but I had to watch the video again. I said, is that what he's talking about? Boy, that was, but I thought that Prince anecdote spoke to kind of how people were trying to give me you as lead singer, give me you as this sex kitten with a Rickenbacker,
Hmm.
and um, and then some of the stories behind the videos. The
Hmm.
videos really kind of were helpful, but then you make a very compelling argument that they also contributed to some of the unrealistic expectations. Like, give me a third album. They were tired, they needed a break, but no, I want more, more, more. And then we start to see this union start to fall apart. Okay, start writing with other people. And Vicky says, I wanted to write more with Sue,
Hmm.
but I couldn't. There was this third album. There was this image. They were constantly trying to style us and find a spot for us and kind of create this image. And we started moving away. And Vicky says at one point, it's so heartfelt. I was more garage and this was so
That
polished.
I think that that's a huge point too. Is even now, like, I hate to. It's weird because it's kind of going back to that thing about Debbie. Like when I'm talking to Debbie, I'm like, oh my God, this is my sister from another mister. And at one point, Vicky even had like a WhatsApp group that said the real Peterson sisters with me, her, and Debbie. And of course, I was like, I was eating that up with
I
like
love it.
Yeah.
5 spoons. I was living for that. Um, but I would say that the difference is like Sue always says, like I was just trying to survive it. I was just trying to survive the experience. That's what she always says to me. I'm just trying to survive it, just trying to survive it. And I think that that's a big thing. And you just kind of think about it, like they're different experiences they were having. And I think that Vicky is like grungy is not the right word, but she's a little bit rough and tumble, like Vicky is. Like she's kind of like the most down to earth person ever. Like you would never know she's done the things she's done. She knows the people she does. She's just cool, normal girl, you know? And I think that that never changed for her, no matter what else. I'm not saying the others did change, but I think she was probably the least impacted by the whole fame thing of everybody. She never wavered from that. And that's not to say that the others that's not bad that others may have changed. It's just I think she just always had that vision and never swayed from it. Versus the other ones, I think other input was coming in and they were dealing with different things. So,
But yeah, this is a really well told story, and I think you give all of the voices, because Annette included as well as Mickey, you give all the voices their time to tell this story. And then when it ends, and I think it's such an interesting bookmark of this event in Texas, and this, there's a lot of cool things and there's a lot of near death, but it speaks to, and the band goes on, but we start to see this, okay, it's time. It's time. Let's move on. And I think you're very so respectful with how the band decides to take a long break. And
mhm,
then we know, in the epilogue, we start to see the things that happen and where they go. And as fans, we do too. And I think we're all kind of saying, we'd love more, but we understand.
mhm,
And I think you end this book letting them have the last word, and just kind of putting and then just letting us know. I think you were gentle with us at the end
oh,
because
bless you.
it's
Did you
time.
guys, did you guys think it was a sad story? Because I've got two emails from people being like, this is a really sad story. And I'm like, you must know nothing about bands or fame or anything if you think this is a sad story. Because I think it's an honest story of what it's like to be in the music business. That's kind of what I thought. But what did you guys think? Did you think it was a sad story?
Exactly the same. And before we started, I'm just going to go back to that quote that I used, Jeff, at the beginning. Um, in your preface, you say the real story of the Bangles is one of every band, and this
Mhm.
band specifically. It's the often bald reality of changing objectives, miscommunications, naivete, disappointments, and the unpredictable consequences of fame. But more importantly, it's a study in hard work, aspiration, friendship, focus, and hope. And
Well,
I
I'm
think that
good.
it all
I'm
comes
good.
together.
No.
It all comes together. I mean, it's a tough story to tell. It's like, okay, where do we start? Okay, let's start at the beginning. Boom, 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 boom. Build, 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 and then tss, we get here. And we, as fans now, we know, but we start to see, and you give us the contributing factors. You flesh out this story from a very personal point of view. And so I wouldn't say it's sad as a fan because we're like, give us more. We always want more.
Mhm.
But I get it. And Jeff's been in a band I haven't, so he knows. And Jeff's been in more than one band. Things happen.
Because they all ended. So that's
Yeah.
why there's been so. But Jen, there is some sadness to it, but I don't see it as a sad story. I see it like to your point, honesty and reality. And
Mhm.
and hearing their different perspectives, it makes it a little less sad. I mean, it's sad that the band did not continue for all that time for whatever reasons. But now we know that they've um, been reunited for different events and what have you. But I didn't feel that sadness because of the way that it was written.
Oh, good, Jeff. That means a
Yeah,
lot to me. That means a lot
yeah.
to me. And
So
and
not
it,
at all.
and Susanna actually is the one that suggested I open with that. I can't take the credit with that Houston scene.
That is scary. That's very
Yeah,
frightening with e-
she
everybody on the overpass and whatnot.
yeah, she suggested that, and she was saying because she's like you really should open it very like
I
visually.
picture. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and it's completely a Jay Roach-ism, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think Jay's gotten her to think more. She's a huge cinema fan anyway. Um, Do you guys have any other questions about the girls or the writing of it or anything else before we go?
I mean, I've asked the questions I wanted, and you've elaborated so much. Thank you so much. Jeff, is there anything else that you want to?
Well, I was just curious about is if there was anything that you asked that they did not want to answer. I know that you mentioned that there was a lot that didn't make the final book because of editing, so I was curious about the editing process too. But did you ask anything and they refused to answer, or um, were they always pretty open? I mean, they're no Jane Whelan apparently,
No, they're not Jane Weedland.
but was there any?
I would say that they weren't. They never. Like Jane will be like, I did this, 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 I did like Jane will just go off about stuff. They would not specifically say like Debbie again, most honest, but like Sue and like I learned how to decode what Sue's saying when she says things, certain phrases and stuff. But Sue's not gonna say Sue would never say, oh, I was doing mad rails of cocaine and then I did this and that. Like she would just never, they never were like that anyway. Like they were never as crazy like that. I think they were very, very straight laced in that way. So in that way, like they they never said they were more like, no, we never did that. Like that was not our thing. So if
Okay,
they did, which I mean, I find it so hard to believe because I worked in the music industry. I'm like, really? Like you just know you and you've been in bands. Like
yeah,
it seems like unbelievable that you're not off your tits every single night, especially in the 80s. You know what I mean?
yep,
But then, like,
yep.
then it also seems unbelievable that Sue never like hooked up with Ralph Macchio, which she could have. So, like, what do I know?
Good point. Good point. Well,
So, so that way, yeah, but they were really, really open, really accessible. I could call them like I could call them right now if I wanted to. Like you could not ask for like a better relationship and working with them. I can say this for anyone that's a fan of theirs, they are all three genuinely awesome people,
I love to hear that. I love to.
really cool people. And I mean, like, and they're kind of like the super friends. That's kind of how I see it too. Like, Vicky is fragile but strong and smart and so good at what she does. And like I said, like I think all of us can see that. Like we are our own worst enemies. A lot of us are. Like if we got of our own way, we could be rocking. And that's I think why she's such an interesting and empathetic character. Vicky just wants everybody to get along. That's what Vicky wants. Vicky just wants everybody to be happy and is always trying to figure out a way to like, have everybody be on the same page. And I think Sue is misunderstood in terms of, yes, Susanna is a total babe and yes, she's a total sex symbol, but Susanna is so freaking smart, so hilarious, just kind. She's kind of like she's very she and I both bond because we both went to Berkeley, so we have that whole kind of thing going on. And like my favorite Susanna story is the part where she is she's just gotten to Berkeley and she's by herself. Her parents don't bring her to college. She's by herself and she's walking down Telegraph Avenue with this bag, and these two big athletes come and they're like, "Oh, can we help you walk your bag to the dorm?" And she realizes, I can be anybody I want to be right now. And you never think of Susanna Hoffs wanting to be anyone but Susanna Hoffs because she's so badass. But showing that humanity and that like insecurity, I thought was really brave of someone of her stature to reveal in the book.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yes, there is no better way. I mean, I want to keep talking, but we've gone over our time. Thank you so much for
No,
indulging.
of course.
one last thing that we wanted to let our audience
Oh,
know, are there any plans for any book signing events or anything to promote your book? You got to be excited that we're coming so close to the time for it to be
I'm
released.
I mean, you guys are kind of like I was like waiting patiently to be invited on. I'm like, when am I going to get on the podcast? There's because we were going to be doing some stuff at Book Soup, but because in Los Angeles, but
Oh,
because of the fires, that's been pushed back. There is a possibility of something where somebody might bring their guitar to do some music. I can't say anything more than that because I'm not sure if it's going to happen or not, but it could happen.
all
And that'd
right.
be in April if that happens.
Okay.
All right. So everybody keep their eyes open. And Jen, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate you. And everybody go get this book. You can do pre-orders
Yes.
now. So thanks, Jen. We appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank
So,
you so much for
Jeff, what do you think?
oh my gosh, I did not expect that conversation to be as great as it was. I mean, I knew it was going to be good, and we were excited because of the book, right? And the content of the book.
She's got a real honest and straightforward way of storytelling. And, some of her other books and even, the ones coming up, and we didn't get into half of what we wanted to, we had a time constraint, but great book, really interesting and an awesome author. And so can't recommend the book enough.
Yeah, and our listeners may have noticed that Ronnie did not join the call. So, at the beginning, we and he was had all intentions to join, but unfortunately, that didn't work out. But it was a great conversation nonetheless. And
Absolutely.
I, having read the book, I know it's great, but it's always you go into something like that with apprehension when there's a band that you love so much and there's a book coming out, you get excited and then you're like, what are they gonna do?
Right.
Not every book that I've read by band about bands that I like, I end up loving. So I'm glad this one was in really good hands, and that's no knock on any particular books about this band in general, but I, this this book was in the right hands, is what I bottom line.
Yeah, I think Jennifer's take on the band helps tell their story. And, she brought some really unique components. The addition of Debbie's journals, I think really kind of adds, another dimension to this story. And I like what she said. She said, they were all honest in answering and speaking with me. And, and you and I have a real special place in our hearts for Debbie Peterson. And the
Oh,
fact that she said Debbie was unguarded. And so Debbie was like very upfront and very honest. And I think that really just adds, Debbie is someone whose voice we didn't hear enough during when the band was together and kind of in this rise. So I think she had a unique perspective to add.
oh, 100%.
So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah. And even towards the end, when Jennifer was talking about the equality of the band, and specifically with what was put into the book and each having an equal say, and that's how the band operates. So to that point, 100% Debbie's story needs to be a part of it, as with the others. But drummers in particular don't usually get a lot of love, and it's usually the front person. So my heart kind of broke a little bit when during the part of the discussion when Jennifer was saying that Debbie said, I know how this goes. It's the conversation you're gonna want to, the conversation's gonna want to be with Sue, but we've reached out to all members of the band, but particularly during the beginning, we wanted those conversations with Annette, with Debbie, of course with Vicky, who we also love equally. But my heart did kind of break when mm, more to the thought about like Debbie's thought process and how she felt that not being maybe um, recognized like she should be.
yeah, I agree. Um, but see, these are the things that we discover, right? When we start to hear these stories or when the band members tell their stories and how they felt in the moment. And that's what I think Jennifer's book does is it really adds some dimension and breadth to this story. I mean, we're fans. We've read a lot of the interviews. We've seen a lot of the interviews. There's a lot of stuff we've collected and there's a lot of lore. But I think Jennifer brings something new to the table and I appreciate that, and I have a very new appreciation for um not just the band members themselves, but Jeff, on a previous episode, we went through the album Everything. And at the time, it's an album that I've had it's just not one of my favorites.
Same. Yeah.
It just isn't. And after reading the book and knowing what kind of built into the story of everything, I have a different appreciation for it now. I understand now why perhaps I wasn't as connected to it. And it was because it was symbolizing this kind of closure in a way, and things were done differently. And it's interesting because there's a quote in the book from Debbie about this book, and so I liked it more because, you know, the songs, the songs were more representation of each one of us. And it was just different, Michael Steele, there's a quote from Michael Steele, and it's like, the previous album was very polished, and this was kind of going back to things being perhaps just a little different.
Mm.
Um, and but also recognizing this was a third album, the label was pushing for it, and there's an observation says it was clear that the songs that Susanna had written with the people that she was collaborating with were the ones that were much more commercial. So there was everyone was kind of doing a different thing, but there was still, yeah, we still have to have this hook. And everything gave us that, gave us two songs after that that were definitely kind of those commercial hits that the label wanted.
Yeah.
But it was a little more representative of what perhaps the other band members wanted to do at that time and not be kind of pushed into a direction. So I have a different appreciation for everything now. And the book helped me do that.
Yeah, then I think that's something that when you dig into a project or a record or even bands, that learning a little bit more about it, and hopefully we can play a part in that with this podcast. It definitely gives a different perspective on things. So yeah, I'm totally alongside you there for sure.
We can keep talking,
Yes.
but I think we just need to let it go and let it be, and just know the book is coming out. It has an official release date here in the US of, I believe, February the 25th. I think the official release date in the UK is February 18.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I was
I
thinking it was
was
around the 20th, so
yeah.
yeah.
But pre-orders here in the US are definitely available. So go look for it at your favorite independent bookstore or wherever it is that you like to get your books. Um, it's a worthwhile read. Um, I read it pretty fast, just because I didn't want to stop.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you like, but worth it, worth your time, and enjoy it. As a fan, just enjoy it because
Yeah.
you're getting some different things in this
Yeah,
book.
for sure. And the book is called Eternal Flame, um the authorized Bengals book,
The authorized biography of the bank.
authorized biography of the band. But
And much thanks to Jennifer Otter Bickerdike, who
yes,
really just added to our conversation so much, and just a great person overall. But
he's
all right,
great.
mi gente, a gruviar.
Groove on or Bangle on.
Bangle on.
Coming in, they were dealing with different things. Sorry, my dog just came in. He's trying to hop on my lap. Is that okay?
That's okay. That's
Come
okay.
on, Woods. Come on,
We
Woody. Come on.
we've had several episodes with pets joining.
Oh yeah,
joining.
cats,
Oh,
dogs.
yeah, my dog is my life. Come here, Buggy. Do you want to see my friends? Come here, bud. Oh, yes, we can scratch your tummy, but mommy has to do work right now. Sorry. Come on
That's
up. Come
okay.
on up. Yes, they want to see you. Come on up. You can come up. Come on up. Come on up. Sorry, this is really, really rude of me. Come on.
That's okay.
Come on. If you're gonna come right now. Okay, you're just gonna sit there then.
Yeah,
Okay,
they'll probably.
this is your last chance to come up. Last chance. Come on. Okay. Sorry.
Um, no, that's okay. That's okay. Oh my gosh. Um,